Donald Trump acaba de recibir hace unos días un golpe de su propio equipo y no se pueden perder este video porque sus ex asesores están revelando lo que realmente ocurre detrás de las puertas de la Casa Blanca. Los guantes se han caído y los autodenominados principales asesores de Donald Trump se están volviendo unos en contra de otros. Los antiguos asesores que que han sido expulsados del régimen están hablando de cómo los enviados y asesores actuales están básicamente destruyendo la credibilidad de Estados Unidos. Es decir, ahí tienen a Keith Kellogg, que es uno de los antiguos líderes militares de más alto rango. Él ocupó un puesto muy importante durante el primer régimen de Donald Trump y ahora se suponía que iba a ser el enviado para Ucrania y para Rusia. Pero Vladimir Putin le dijo a Donald Trump: no lo quiero como enviado en Rusia, solo quiero a Witkoff. Porque claro, a Witkoff lo puedo manipular y Witkoff es un lamebotas de Vladimir Putin. Debido a eso tuviste a Kellogg convertido únicamente en el enviado para Ucrania. Básicamente él anda por ahí diciendo: miren, Witkoff y Kushner son horribles, no saben qué demonios están haciendo, son como agentes inmobiliarios corruptos y ven el ser enviados como si estuvieran haciendo negocios de bienes raíces, lo cual no es la forma en la que se puede ver ninguno de estos asuntos, como que si fuera una transacción inmobiliaria cualquiera. Y luego Keith Kellogg, quien en su momento lo fue, ya no es enviado de Donald Trump para Ucrania, pero era como que el tipo principal en Ucrania, del que yo decía, por cierto, que no iba a durar más de un año, y no llegó ni de cerca al año. Por cierto, le está diciendo a Europa, a medida que nos acercamos a la cumbre de la OTAN, miren, simplemente ignoren a los Estados Unidos, ignoren lo que Donald Trump le dice al resto del mundo, ignoren las palabras de Donald Trump, ignoren lo que dicen sus asesores. Y lo que Kellogg parece sugerir, además, es que a nivel institucional todavía tenemos personas en el ejército y en la OTAN y todavía tenemos algunas personas que van a intentar convencer a los Pete Hegseth, a los Witkoff, a los Kushner y a los Trump. Así que solo intenten evitar su retórica y trataremos de superar esto juntos. Es básicamente asombroso escuchar a Keith Kellogg, el principal enviado de Donald Trump, ya saben, simplemente criticar con todo a los asesores de Donald Trump. Dice que tiene a los peores asesores, quiero decir, también está criticando a Donald Trump, por cierto, ya saben, es demasiado cobarde para decirlo abiertamente, pero echen un vistazo a lo que Keith Kellogg dice sobre Witkoff y sobre Kushner justo aquí.
I think the steep learning curve is with his advisors. Who's advising the president? Have you done this before? And when you look at, like his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and you look at Steve Witkoff, who was the envoy to Russia, what is their diplomatic background? What have they done? They've sold real estate. And I've repeatedly said in public, this is not a business deal. Okay, this is conflict. And you have to understand conflict management and understand the nuances of the relationship with the different foreign leaders. They've got their view. You need to have your view as well. And I think, I can swim by dint of personality. You really can't. And I say that with Putin because I keep thinking Putin was a former KGB guy. Once a KGB guy, always a KGB guy. He wants territorial gains as well. And you have to understand that. I think Europeans do understand that because they live in the neighborhood. We don't live in the neighborhood. So sometimes we have to get our advisors to think, you really don't understand this guy or his way of doing business. You know, when I was first the deputy national security or the national security advisor of Vice President Pence, I brought in a woman who was very understood Putin. Her name was Fiona Hill. She was very liberal. I said, don't worry, Fiona, you're not going to be anywhere near the Oval Office. But I wanted to understand Putin. You need to help me understand Putin. Because if I'm going to advise the president, I need to get your view so I can kind of park it in my brain what we're talking about. And I stay in constant contact with her because I said, you're got to be my gut check. Am I right?
Y luego va y explica por qué la cumbre de Alaska con Vladimir Putin fue un fracaso tan grande también. Él dice, ya saben, que Vladimir Putin pensaba que iba a recibir estas tierras. Es como si los asesores de Donald Trump le hubieran estado diciendo a Vladimir Putin, te respaldamos, y luego Vladimir Putin se presentó y en realidad no había nada que pudiéramos entregar. Como que no estábamos preparados, de modo que esto se quedó congelado y luego Vladimir Putin se marchó y ellos intentaron actuar como que si fuera normal. Pero bueno, Vladimir Putin se retiró de ahí. Observen lo que Keith Kellogg, el antiguo enviado, tiene que decir. Miren por favor el clip.
And I've said repeatedly to him, some of your advisors said to the Ukrainians, well, if you just give up land in Donetsk province, I said, they're not going to do that. It won't happen. If they want that land, they to the Russians, they're going to have to fight for it. And then let the best team win on the ground. And I don't think they've got the combat capability to really close the deal. And the reason why in Donetsk they don't want to give up that land, it's the last true fortified land before Kharkiv, which is their second largest city. So they're not going to give it up voluntarily. We pressed, Putin came into Alaska thinking we had an agreement with the Ukrainians to give up land. No, they don't. I don't know who advised him to say that. Some of his advisors may have gotten that, and maybe they relayed that to Putin. So that's the reason why in Alaska, Putin came in with one feeling, left with another. Remember in Alaska, they left before their formal lunch. They just walked out the door. I saw that happen in Singapore with Kim Jong-un. Same thing. What you heard is not what you actually saw. So it's a long answer to a short question. Ukrainians are doing better. Ukrainians are doing better. And I think the president sees that. And I think now the adjustment will be made. Remember, there's a very strong support for Ukraine in the Senate and the House of Representatives. And you get into the heartland as well. Don't think what's happening here in Washington, D.C., which can be a swamp unto itself, and think what's happening holistically in the rest of the nation.
Esto es más de Kate Kellogg sobre lo desastroso que fue esta cumbre de Alaska. Miren, por favor.
I believe the Russians came in, and I'm not going to get into the actual substance of the meeting because that was between Putin and President Trump. But we were on a phone call at like 2 o'clock in the morning getting the readout from it. I think the Russians came in thinking one thing, and the U.S. came in basically saying kind of, well, we're going to leave it neutral and see what happens. And when the Russians realized they weren't going to get what they wanted, which was the United States to say to the Ukrainians, well, if you just give up the rest of Donetsk Oblast, this thing can be over. No one won't. And I repeatedly told them that. So I think what happened is the Russians went home thinking, well, that's where you hear it right now, Lavrov speaking, well, the spirit of Alaska, wrong. And I think they both agreed to disagree. So what do I think came out of it? Just a meeting. Nothing really came out of it. I will say, though, that there were some visuals that were deliberately done, like the flyover or going down that row of fighter jets and everything else, kind of telling, President Putin, we're pretty strong militarily. We can decide what to do. But I don't think anything was agreed to when it came out of that.
Y luego Kate Kellogg dice, simplemente ignoren. Ese fue su mensaje para el mundo. Ignoren a los asesores de Donald Trump. Ignoren a Donald Trump. Solo necesitan tomar el liderazgo. Estados Unidos ya no es un líder mundial. Esto es lo que sigue. Ya no es un líder mundial en nada relacionado con Europa o Medio Oriente. Simplemente tomen el control. Piensen en eso. El tipo ahora se ve reducido a decir, y tiene razón, en el sentido de decir, no pueden confiar en nosotros, pero su consejo al entrar a esa cumbre de la OTAN en Turquía es que simplemente tienen que lidiar con eso ustedes mismos. Miren, por favor.
And by the way, I like Maloney. She's really good. And what she said is correct. I mean, sometimes getting with his advisors, you got to make sure that you prep the president for saying things. He has a kind of a drift towards saying things right off the cuff and then goes, oops, later on, come back and try to reframe that. And I think he's got a bend towards Europe, but the prioritization is right now they're prioritizing Latin and South America, like we do with Venezuela and Cuba. Right now we're involved in the Middle East as well, and understanding that situation we've got. And sort of saying to the Europeans, and I've said this to Rutte as well, Secretary General of NATO, you guys are stronger than you think. You're better than you think. Yeah, I've said it repeatedly. It's not bad for the Europeans to say, why don't you just take a back seat, okay? You're worried about a nuclear umbrella. That's the big thing you're worried about. Let the French handle that. They started to step out and do that. Macron started to say that. He's got 4 nuclear SSBN submarines out there. 4 nuclear submarines can destroy the friggin' world. And I think if he's been willing to do that, of giving a nuclear umbrella to Europe, then the rest of Europe can develop and actually provide the support, understanding that the Russians and provide that strong support for Ukraine against the Russians as well. So I think it's just a prioritization issue. There's enough people out there that kind of say, well, sir, we need to think about shifting towards the Pacific. We've tried to do that for almost 30 years. And I think we need to consider China. China's an adversary. That doesn't mean adversary doesn't necessarily mean enemy. But I think we have to address that. And we only have so many resources we can do that with because our military is downsized as well. not to the degree a lot have, like the British or somebody else. But the fact is, we have to prioritize what's out there right now. And sometimes I said, look, you can't ignore the rhetoric that you hear. We kind of put it in the back of your mind, look at what's actually happening on the ground and elsewhere. Like Congress is in full support of what's happening in Europe as well as Ukraine, and kind of let it go there instead of taking a personal umbrage at the incident. Think of the long-term gain. What's going to happen.
Oh, por cierto, un agradecimiento a la excelente gente de TVP World por esta entrevista. Creo que hicieron un excelente trabajo en esta entrevista con Kate Kellogg. Son simplemente asombrosas las respuestas de Kate Kellogg aquí mismo. Y luego continúa diciendo por aquí, Europa, esto es lo que dice el enviado de Estados Unidos. Diles, Europa, que los Estados Unidos necesitan sentarse en el asiento trasero de los Estados Unidos. Que se sienten en el asiento mientras que ustedes toman el control. Aquí observen lo que dice en esta entrevista bastante poderosa, la verdad. Miren, por favor.
My advice to Rutte and the rest of us is say the Europeans take it and tell the United States instead of the front seat, take a back seat. And we've got this one in our backyard. This is in our interest. And I understand what you're saying, but we've got the lead. You don't have the lead. Thank you very much. That in itself is very telling because you do have the capacity and you do have the capability to do it. What Ukraine relies on the United States primarily for is our overhead and our technology to see in the battlefield. And the weapons are pretty darn good. We proved that in Iran as well. We were able to punch through air defense. They've got certain technology that we can beat. We know we can beat it. So the buying the American gear is because you're buying first-class gear. That doesn't mean the Europeans don't have first-class stuff. You look at the Swedish fighters coming in, the Griffin, that's a first-class fighter. But only certain nations have Generation 5 stealth fighters. The Americans do, the Chinese do, the Russians do as well. So that technology is going to come to you eventually. And I keep pressing the Europeans. Why don't you have co-production? Keep pressing that issue. And I think if I was giving a template to the Europeans, just tell the president, we've got this. This is in our backyard. Thank you very much. Cuba's in your backyard. We're not going to interfere. Ukraine's in our backyard. This is our business. And I think that would be a very scene-setting discussion to have with the president to say, America's going to be there, but we're taking primacy for this, not you.
Mientras que él decía esto, tienen al ministro de Asuntos Exteriores de Rusia, Sergei Lavrov, publicando el siguiente comunicado también. Antes de la cumbre de Alaska, Steve Witkoff llevó propuestas de Donald Trump a Moscú. Fueron discutidas en Alaska y aceptadas por parte de Rusia. Ahora, Marco Rubio y Kellogg, y también ahora otros que dicen que no hubo acuerdos, eso no es particularmente elegante. Ahora, cabe señalar que según el libro Cambio de régimen de Maggie Haberman y Jonathan Swank, Steve Witkoff buscó construir una relación personal con Vladimir Putin mientras que intentaba negociar el fin de la guerra en Ucrania. Durante una reunión en Kremlin, Vladimir Putin estaba garabateando en una hoja de papel de escribir y anotó 3+2, lo cual según se informa se refería a un marco territorial que había discutido como parte de un posible acuerdo de paz. Witkoff le pidió a Vladimir Putin que firmara el papel y le permitiera conservarlo para poder tener la caligrafía personal de Vladimir Putin y enmarcarla en su oficina. Vladimir Putin lo firmó y Witkoff más tarde mandó enmarcar la nota. En serio, la verdad, en serio. Y luego se puede ver cuando Witkoff estuvo en Suiza y llevaba puesto un Rolex de $100,000 justo ahí, con cara de asustado. Pero en última instancia para mí lo que Witkoff estaba haciendo era estar allí para preservar sus acuerdos comerciales, y él y Kushner, ya saben, tenían a J.D. Vance, y no estoy tratando de darle ningún crédito a J.D. Vance en absoluto, pero J.D. Vance estaba allí como que tecleando e intentando redactar después del memorando de entendimiento de 14 puntos, una declaración conjunta desde Suiza que hablaba de que Irán formaría parte de la célula de distensión de conflictos. ¿Recuerdan eso? Que serían Irán, Qatar y Pakistán como parte de una célula de distinción de conflictos en el Líbano, y luego Marco Rubio corrió y creó la célula de distinción con Israel en el Líbano, y luego le dio zonas piloto adicionales a Israel en el Líbano, además de zonas de seguridad, e intentó socavar el memorando de entendimiento, ¿verdad? Es una locura total lo que estaba ocurriendo justo ahí. Pero tenías a Witkoff por allá, como siempre, presumiendo su Rolex de $105,000. Quiero decir, ya saben, él era como un tipo de bienes raíces corrupto que se jactaba de ir a Harlem con armas para cobrar la renta, Por eso a Donald Trump le gusta Witkoff. Ese es el tipo que está allá afuera, hablando con Vladimir Putin y estando en estas, ya saben, como conversaciones, como que tienes a Witkoff y Kushner que estuvieron allá en Suiza. Tienes al maldito Michael Wallus, el esposo de Tiffany Trump, que también estuvo en una reunión importante con MBZ, el presidente de los Emiratos Árabes Unidos, que gobierna Abu Dhabi. ¿Qué demonios está pasando, amigos? Solo les diré lo que el profesor John Mearsheimer tuvo que decir sobre Irán. Como ven ellos a Witkoff y a Kushner, lo ven como títeres de Benjamin Netanyahu, y Mearsheimer tiene razón. Así es como Irán y otros ven a Witkoff y a Kushner. Son como unos payasos. Miren, por favor.
In the end, we're going to lose. The lobby and Israel itself are going to be outraged by any compromises that we make. And whoever actually makes those compromises is going to pay a significant political price.
From the Iranian perspective, surely they know that they're negotiating with Netanyahu's puppets.
Oh, absolutely. They've made that clear. That's why they want Vance to come to the negotiations. They know that Kushner is basically an Israeli cutout, and that Witkoff, not only is Witkoff a Zionist, but he's demonstrated quite clearly, both in his negotiations with the Iranians and the Russians, that he's massively incompetent. So they don't want to deal with those two. They want to deal with Vance. And they did deal with Vance.
Pero Donald Trump dice que Witkoff y Kushner son como sus Henry Kissingers, según sus palabras.
Henry Kissingers, he says.
As well as special envoy, I call him Henry Kissinger who doesn't leak. Because Henry is a big leaker. Richard Nixon would beat him. Henry, somebody's leaking on us. There's somebody leaking. Henry would say, we'll get to the bottom. It was Henry that was leaking. That wasn't good. So we have Henry Kissinger, better than Henry Kissinger, and he doesn't leak. Special envoy Steve Witkoff. Thank you, Steve. Doing a great job. And he and Jared Kushner, they're like a team, and boy, I tell you, they're a good team. High IQ. It's a high IQ team. You want to find your high IQ people.
Y luego, por supuesto, Witkoff habla constantemente de lo mucho que él y Vladimir Putin se llevan bien y de que habla con Ushakov por su cuenta. Miren, por favor.
I can tell you that yesterday on the call with the president, the Russians said that they have not been sharing. That's what they said. So, you know, we can take them at their word, but they did say that.
Y luego aquí está lo que Witkoff dice sobre Vladimir Putin. Putin nunca me dijo nada sobre que yo pensaba que fuera deshonesto.
So hopefully you'll be hearing some good news in the coming weeks.
Well, a lot of this does boil down to Vladimir Putin, and I know you've dealt directly with him. So first of all, what is that like? And how do you, with this position, go into dealing with some of these adversarial people?
He's never been anything other than straight with me. And I say that and I get attacked. But that's an accurate statement. He's told me that this is what his red lines are. You know, Lara, I got attacked for going to meet him 8 times. How would you make a deal with someone on the other side unless you knew where the other person was coming from? I needed to understand what his motivations were, his goals, and so forth. And I actually think that a lot of those meetings now are becoming very relevant. We understand where they are.
Y luego finalmente hablé un poco de esto, pero el expresidente del Estado Mayor Conjunto, Sekou Brown Jr., alzó la voz en un artículo de opinión en Foreign Affairs señalando a Donald Trump por politizar al ejército, comparando a Donald Trump con el rey George III, y tal como los Estados Unidos se fundaron y se levantaron en contra de monarcas como el rey Jorge III, como Donald Trump está lanzando al ejército a politizarlo y deshacerse de los generales y almirantes de calidad, los de 4 estrellas, ya saben, en realidad están ayudando y colocando en su lugar a personas menos calificadas o menos cualificadas. Eso es un poco de lo que Pete Hegseth está haciendo, y el propio George Washington se preocupó por el abuso de poder y se esforzó enormemente por evitarlo en su propia carrera. A lo largo de la Guerra de Independencia, continuó y continúa diciendo: él sabía que la República sufriría a largo plazo si el ejército se convirtiera en un instrumento de la voluntad del comandante en lugar de la de los líderes políticos del pueblo. Cuando los presidentes utilizan las Fuerzas Armadas para prisiones políticas más contenciosas, tales como abordar delitos internos en ciudades, la labor del ejército se vuelve más difícil. Recurrir a una solución militar en lugar de solucionar la incapacidad o disfunción subyacente en las instituciones civiles desvía al ejército de enfocarse en su misión principal de combate. Y como George Washington sabía, no es trabajo del ejército salvar a la República de un callejón sin salida político. De hecho, si le pides demasiado al ejército, arriesgas toda la empresa, arriesgas todo. Ya lo tienen, amigos, por favor déjenme saber ustedes qué opinan al respecto. Como siempre les digo, para mí su opinión siempre va a ser lo más importante. Recuerden que si les gusta el contenido de política estadounidense, les va a encantar suscribirse al canal, ya que subimos videos como estos todos los días. Mi nombre es José Alvarado, yo soy economista y estoy comprometido a informarlos diariamente. Nos vemos en el siguiente video. Adiós.